Well, hello there, humans of his earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and I'm here today to have a little chat with you about the T110E4. It's a tank that's had a very, very soft spot in my garage for quite some time, and should probably be in yours. If you've never driven it, you're really missing out. And it's a treat because the Tier 9 and the Tier 10 parts of this line, the T30 and the T110E4, are both fantastic vehicles and well worth an effort. That said, the Tier 8's an absolute train wreck that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but you get swings and roundabouts, ups and downs on the seesaw of life. This thing's a monster, an absolute monster, and I've been successful in this for such a long time. It's been one of my favourite Tier 10 tanks for such a long time, and that's saying something because there are a lot of really good vehicles at Tier 10, and there's a lot of very, very good heavy tanks at Tier 10. But I consider this to be one of the best heavy tanks that you can actually grind away in. And that's pretty odd to say that because it is in fact listed as a tank destroyer. And it's got the gun of a tank destroyer. It's got a massive 150mm gun. And it's got the pen of a tank destroyer. It has a brilliant 295mm of penetration on its AP rounds. And that's important because nowadays, as we all know, big pen guns are all the rage because if you can't pen, you've got to use premium ammunition, and your premium ammunition does a much lower amount of damage than your standard AP rounds do. And that means tanks like this that can fire out 300mm of pen on a good day are really, really valuable. And tanks that can do it with the 640 Alpha shot are even more so. And why do I call this a heavy tank? Well, let's have a look and watch this shot. I mean, this is why you love a 640 Alpha gun. Let's have a look at the E100. And let's have a look at it compared to the T110E4. Now, the E4 has actually a pretty good armor profile, pretty good turret. It's strong, but it's by no means impenetrable. A lot like that thing there, the E100. It's not as good as Sidescraper as the E100, but its gun handling leaves it for dead. It's got 0.335 dispersion versus 0.362 dispersion on the E100. Its on the movement rotation coefficient, so the actual while you're swinging the turret around and firing, is 0.17, which is right up there for a heavy tank. Pretty solid for a heavy tank. That's like the Conqueror's got the same kind of coefficient. And the E100's is 0.21. Again, not a particularly good number. It's got slightly less gun depression than the E100, 1 degree less, which is, you know, that's a reasonable amount. 7 degrees for the E100, 6 degrees for the T110E4, but it's certainly not horrible. And where it really, really, really comes good, aim time 2.26 versus 2.63. Now these numbers are from Blitz stars, and Blitz stars is talking about aim time from a fully stopped kind of, from the time you fire the shot to the time it comes back out. Whereas the actual real life aim time is seriously affected by the movement and the traverse of the tank, which is why that 0.17 is really important, because your aim time doesn't really start until the tank is completely stock still. And you'll see the aim time that they're talking about on Blitz stars is more or less the aim time from when you're completely stationary, the reticle is completely zoomed in, and you press the button, and now. But if you're moving, you extend that aim time. So having a lower coefficient and a lower aim time overall is really important, particularly for a tank destroyer. And it's got a turret, which means it can set shops up very easily. It's just like driving a heavy tank. It's a well-armoured tank, and it's got very, very good pen numbers. And really that's the key here, because it is an absolute natural predator for a tank like that. That is an IS-7. Being able to frontally go through an IS-7 and hit for in excess of 550 is just absolutely gorgeous, especially when the meta is so heavily dominated by Mouses and IS-7s and tanks with serious armor profiles and IS-4s and even your E100s. And when they're angling up, they're very, very tough to penetrate. But when you can put 300mm of penetration into the field on a standard 640 Alpha round, you are something to be very, very seriously paid attention to. And that's the case. The E4 is being consistently one of the best performed tanks in my garage. And it's a reliable tank. It gets through armor in a meta that is considerably serious about its armor. I mean, with the buffs we've seen to armor and survivability of tanks, with the ability to really up the ante on any particular tank with equipment and using your spare parts, the ability to nullify that is very, very important. And that's something that the T110E4 can do. Not only that, it's got a much better power to weight ratio than an E100. It's got 15.15 horsepower per ton, as opposed to the E100's 10.2. Now, neither of those are groundbreaking numbers, but they are important when they're considered relevant to one another. Like, it is a much better tank relevant to the E100 in terms of horsepower to ton. And you can see here, poor old Mojo, I did no damage in this game. He's in the T110E4, and he is absolutely under the pump. He was 1 on 4. He's taken out the Jagdpanzer E100 because he went round it, got behind it, and because he has a turret and the Jagdpanzer E100 doesn't, he was completely able to nullify his massive big gun and do all kinds of nasty things. And he's put himself in a situation where he's bouncing shots. There's one E100, there's another one coming up. And he's really capable here of doing the monster carry. He needs to kill both this E100 and the next one, and he's bounced a couple of key shots. That 54 gets another one on the side of his turret. He pulls back, needs to roll high, 652, and he does an extra 12. Just come on, Mojo. This is to really bring home the chocolate rations. You can... Over angle, you should have heard Discord. We were screaming about that one. He got the mastery for that. Did 6k damage in a loss. The ability of the T110E4's turret is phenomenal. I mean, that's an E100 frontally. It certainly seemed to put the hurt on him. Because you have the turret, you can set shots up like this. You're a heavy tank. You're not a TD. It's just such a falsehood. You can set this shot up, and that's something that the other guys simply do not have the opportunity to do. The other turreted TD at this tier that is worth mentioning is the FV215B183, but its turret is at the back and it doesn't have anywhere near the armor profile of this thing. I mean, you can switch up to APCR and be guaranteed of a pen for a big, healthy dose. Look at it, just, I'm firing on the reload and doing really, really well here and absolutely holding my own. And it's unfortunate that the rest of the team's getting flogged. But that's rated battles for you. Good team play will win out. And that's exactly what the Reds are doing. They're sharing their hit point pool here, which is good team play. You can't beat that. We're trying to get another shot into this, trying to get the kill shot into the adamant. Did you see where that went? Neither did I. I don't know what happened there. That was absolutely ludicrous. I thought I'd have to use this clip just to show you that. It didn't even give me a noise. I'd love to have got a shot in there, but I have to settle for a side shot and get a massive roll there, which was really, really handy. So back to the horsepower per ton. If you're going to drive this as opposed to, say, a big, hefty, super heavy like the E100, you've got 15.15 horsepower per ton, which is 50% more than the E100, which is pretty bloody impressive. The mouse is another problem like that. It has 10.21 horsepower per ton, just a tiny smidgen better than the E100, but not particularly better. And so you've got them beat. Then you get down to the stuff where it brings you back to the field, which is your coefficients, your terrain resistance numbers, and they are worse than both the E100 and the mouse. Not particularly different in a couple of spots, but yeah, enough to make it pretty much an even Stevens call in terms of mobility. So both the tanks have very, very similar mobility. And that's one of the reasons why I find this tank to be so effective in such a wide variety of situations. And they buffed this tank a few patches ago. Well, it's quite a few patches ago now. And I thought it was bloody brilliant before the buffs. And after the buffs came in, I was just like, wow, this tank is great. And this thing used to be considered a real red-headed stepchild by a lot of people. They didn't like this tank. They thought the tank was a little bit weak in terms of its gameplay and its ability. And I was on the record as really, really enjoying the T110E4 for quite some time. It carries on exactly where the T30 left off, and it gives so much value for money. That there's two keys for this tank, and I know I've mentioned them both already. And they've become all the more apparent since the premium ammunition changes. One is that obviously being able to do big damage with an AP round is important. An AP has a couple of things going for it. It loses less penetration over distance than APCR. And that's important because it means that you can reliably hit targets at distance and not have to worry. You can sidescrape in this tank too, by the way, as you can see me doing there. Like, as long as you don't get too serious about your angles, that's somewhere where the E100 obviously has a hands down win on top. There we go. Could have switched that up for HE, but just wanted to get the shot in. We're going to lose this one, but we are doing a really good job of absolutely making them pay for every square inch that they come and take off us. So that's an important thing to think about. Your gun handling, your aim time, your dispersion, your penetration, those things that all go into gun handling are really, really good for a tier 10 tank. Really solid, okay? Then you have to factor into this as well the fact that you have the turret that lets you set your shots up. Now, why is that so important? Because it means you can realistically side scrape and get shots off, even though you can't side scrape at the super steep angle that a lot of your more heavily armored tanks can. And it's something that a lot of TDs have a problem with because they have no turret. They have to really pull quite a ways back and expose their lower glacis to get shots off. This tank can get away with it a lot easier than most tanks can, that most tank destroyers can at this tier. It's also got really good DPM numbers for a tank with a 150mm gun. Your E100, your mouse, they both post 2.5k, 2.6k DPM numbers. This thing's at nearly 3,000 damage per minute, which is a legitimately large slice of the pie. And the fact that not only is it at nearly 3,000 damage per minute, but its effective DPM is much better because its penetration numbers are 295 on standard AP rounds versus the 258 that the E100 runs or the 246 that the mouse runs, means you get a lot more bang for your buck. You really can do the business. And because it's got that turret and a fairly decent armor profile and a very, very solid dose of mobility and speed, it's 35 km/h top speed for a tank with this much armor and this much firepower is phenomenally good. When you see an opportunity, you can just go forward and hit point trade because you do more damage than them. You do more damage than all the tier 10 heavies you're going to run across. You can walk up, hit them with AP rounds for 600 plus, and know that you can comfortably hit point trade with them and come out on top. And that if you are very clever with the way you play your tank, you can actually put them in situations where they're in real trouble because they have to put shots in and have to aim up because your armor profile is such that you can, make them work for thetheir money. And if you just feel a bit lazy, you can put an APCR round in, get a whopping 375mm of pen, and just go straight through and still do 545 alpha on them, which is going to absolutely smash them because you are still doing every single bit as much in terms of damage per minute as they are with their standard AP rounds. So you hear what I'm saying? It's not just one thing. It's the correlation between game meta changes, gun handling, and penetration and mobility. All these things combined for me to make this tank special. And for that reason, I think it's just an absolute unsung hero. A lot of people really don't realise this. Now, Kintech was in 3 games in a row for me. One of them I was in a 215B 183. I was just screwing around. I don't think the 183 is very good for ranked at all. I don't like it. I've lost so much rating playing it in ranked. But you know what? The 183 is such good fun. It's just a stupid tank. It's a bit of a cancer in the game. It's a horrible tank in ways. But Kintech was in a game with me in, I think it was his Object 140. And I top hatched him for 1300 damage with a 183 on Himmelsdorf from a very sneaky sniper spot. And the next game I rolled the E4 and I top hatched him for 700. Now we lost the first game, we won the second, and this was going to be, there he is in the IS7. This was going to be the game where we decided who was the winner. You're going to see me using the turret here a lot. You can angle this thing up, get really good nice armor profile on your turret, on your gun mantlet, and just the lower glacis on this tank, because it is a rounded lower glacis, a lot like the T110E4, the M48A1 pattern, and more importantly like the T110E3. We're going to snap a shot right into the back of his engine deck as he goes past there, and we're just angling this thing up here, keeping the turret pointed towards the enemy, keeping the chassis angled so you've got the highest effective armor. This E50M does a really good job here. As soon as Kintech gets isolated, we switch down to the APCR. This is what I mean. It is a natural born predator for an IS7, because you can swap over to that 375mm of pen and negate what is a huge armor advantage for that tank. We just do a sneaky 675 there into the side of the E75, start angling up, and it's very hard. Since the medium nerfs, it's been another bonus for this tank. It's really forced mediums to struggle in terms of penetration, and it means that they can't use their full APCR all the time. They've got to be very, very careful with their damage numbers. And now we've got a Jag Panzer 100 in the Object 140. Hats off to that E50M. He plays an absolutely outstanding game blocking here on this Object 140 in the Jag Panzer 100. He still manages to put damage in without getting wrecked, and he does that even with the idea that there were 3 tanks on him. And we're just pulling back here, looking for shots on the Jag. He's coming across, smack a full round in the bottom of a very, very heavily armoured tank. He takes another one from the side, and all of a sudden he is in absolute hit point distress. And we are now pushing up very, very fast down there into that 140. Hurried shot there from him. I don't blame him. He is feeling the pain. And then we take off at our absolute top speed, which is very, very, very much like a normal standard tier 10 heavy. The 140 is pulling all the way back. E50 gets him anyway. Very, very strong game there from that E50M. Hats off to you, Nobunaga at Hono. Did very, very well. Sorry, no column to end. Sorry, my mistake. Watch this. Bang. Sit down. 1,000 damage. Thanks very much. Yeah, great tank. Highly recommend it. I didn't mean to belittle the E100. The E100 is a good tank. Don't think I don't like the E100. I just think this is a better heavy than it is. And that doesn't mean that there's not a place for it in the game. It's certainly a better side scraper. But if I have to take something into battle and to play a heavy roll and to hold a choke point, I'd rather ride this thing. It's fierce. I just thought I'd include this at the end. This is just silly. This is rated battles. 22 hit point grill. Just 22 hit point grill, right? We are getting smashed, but we've got all the caps. We're about to lose our E5. The grill says if I win, Neil is going to fend. The T95s don't die. There's one of him left. They're all coming. I don't know why. I don't think they can see him right now. That grill doesn't know where he is. He's absolutely hugging the corner. Couldn't get any closer. Oh, come on. Thank you. That's ratings battles for you guys. Until next time, look after yourselves. Stay safe on the battlefield. And bye for now.